Alright, we're recording. Alright, let's get down to business because this is, I don't even, title of this video, Natural Law, okay? There's an importance to know in natural law. And in fact, this is the one thing they should teach at school, okay? But I'm trying to think if I've ever been taught anything on natural law at school. Not really, no. And not in the way I'm just about to tell you about it now. Definitely not. They barely get into any kind of legal stuff at school. In fact, it's given a wide berth, isn't it? So, anyway, natural law. This is absolutely terrible the way I got this thing set up, but whatever. And I've got shadows all over me. Apologise for the quality of this, and of course, I listened to the last video and it sounded like poo as well, the quality of the microphone. But I just, I got to say, that's why it's going to be. Anyway, without further ado, natural law. Okay, so what is natural law? Now, this can be referred to in a few other words, etc. And this will probably put a lot of people off. But God's law, that's the other proper name for it, I would say. Proper name, whatever that means. But that's another common name for it. Universal law, the balance, I guess you Star Wars, the balance of the Force, the law of the Creator, the law of the universe, human, moral law, maybe. Anyway, basically, it's stuff that you can observe in nature. I got a list of I got a whole bunch of stuff written down here that I'm going to try and help me along with the video, but of course, I'm not going to be able to read it while I'm going along. So anyway, it's stuff that you can observe in nature, okay? That's the gist of it, right? Versus what man passes off as law, which is not really law at all. This is where terminology gets confusing. What we adhere to in law is adhere. I can't even say the word properly now. But what we follow in society is man's law. And the only way they get away with calling it law is the fact that they've incorporated some natural law in with the legal system. Which, if you haven't watched my other video, the legal system that you are in is, if you watch the film The Matrix, this is what the film The Matrix is talking about. This is what the metaphor is in it, the analogy. It is the legal system as we know it. Society as we know it. So what's the difference between law and the legal system, Dan? What are you talking about? Well, the legal system is the made-up bunch of rules that they've stuck in with real law, which real law is natural law, okay? So real law would be you don't kill somebody, you don't steal stuff from other people, you don't physically violate somebody else, that kind of stuff, basically. You don't enslave other men, okay? Everybody is equal in natural law, okay? Now, when we get into the legal system likes you to agree to a bunch of stuff under a contract, okay? And what that does is that binds you into doing these things. But what they cunningly do is that instead of binding you with as yourself, as a real man, they bind you in a fictitious role, okay? So you're playing a part in this system. Imagine the system as Days of Your Lives, a soap opera, okay? And you're playing a role within that system, okay? And your character looks just like you, has the same name and everything, right? But you're playing this role, okay? You don't realize it, okay? And so what you do is you give your consent and you play along with the rules because you don't know anything different, okay? So the legal system drums up stuff like, you know, contracts. Everything's in a contract, basically. You agree to do something for somebody else for a certain period of time, and you're tied to doing that. Otherwise, you end up going to jail, or you end up paying a penalty of some description if you don't follow the rules, okay? And the rules are made up by men, okay? They're not real laws. They're made up. Now, they incorporate some real laws from natural law, which is the killing people or doing physical harm to people or stealing people's possessions, okay? But there's a bunch of other rules like speeding, like, I don't know, taking drugs, this kind of stuff that actually is just a rule, or what they like to call codes, rules, regulations. All these kind of legal terms are alluding to the idea of a man-made rule that you're supposed to follow. You know, you need to give your consent to follow that, okay? Right, with that being said, swig of tea. Natural law, you can see this stuff all around us, right? It's the things that govern nature, okay? Gravity, that's the biggest one that springs to mind, okay? Excuse me. I got a cold at the minute, and that was pretty grim what I just did. I'm so sorry about that. I should probably edit that. I probably won't bother editing that out, but you know. But I'll try and cough next time. But I'm, you know, sorry. Okay. I don't really know where to go with this, to tell you the truth, because there's so many avenues, right? But to understand, to truly, really start understanding this, I mean, you can come from a point of not believing in God and just going off what you see in nature, okay? You can get to natural law via that atheistic view of reality, okay? There's nothing wrong with that, you know, whatever, each to his own, you know. If that's what you want to believe, that's what you believe, right? I used to be an atheist, and I have come full circle. I completely and utterly believe there is a creator to this madness that we're in right now. Now, when I say madness, I mean not to be derogatory, but it is kind of crazy, the world, you know, in which we live. Now, so the acceptance of there actually is a creator out there, and the idea that some of the things that we see in nature are put there actually as an example or a way of reading nature to infer rules, you know. So what we need to do is we need to figure out where we stand in nature, and then we can figure out what the rules should be. Okay, so I'm gathering that some people haven't seen some of my other videos, so this is just complete flat out. Some of this stuff, if you've watched other videos, you'll have already seen this, but the first thing we need to know in nature is everything's balanced, okay? We can observe this with our own two eyes. We can see natural cycles where balance is maintained, usually within a cycle, okay? But you can make an observation of balance right in front of the mirror, okay? If you look in front of the mirror and you look at your face, you can see that there's two sides, okay, to your body, okay, which are identical. You know, your body is balanced, okay? So these are all little clues about how nature works. It works as a balancing act, okay? Where was I just going to go with this? Even the species itself, the way the species reproduces, okay? The way the species reproduces is it has two different sexes, okay? Now, although these sexes aren't the same, they balance each other, okay? So from the two different sexes, you have one species, okay? This is examples of two opposites, if you like, being balanced. And that's without getting I don't want to get too technical into duality and whether that really exists and everything, but we can observe in nature balance, okay? And if you really break it down, right, okay, this is what I believe, okay? Now, it might not be what other people believe, but if you really break it down, what is God, okay? If you use common sense, right, we're experiencing something here, material, physical being. We're experiencing something, okay? The polar opposite of something is nothing, okay? Now the dogs are going off in the background. I don't know what's going on out there. But, okay, so you have something on the one hand, and you have nothing on the other hand, okay? There's two opposites there, okay? And God, okay, put my tea down. I can't do no drawings for you. But you have these, let's get in the middle. You have these two polar opposites, something and nothing, okay? So if you imagine these two things on a linear line, okay, and one shoots off to something and one shoots off to nothing. Excuse me if I change these around as I'm going, but somewhere on that line there's a balancing point, which is God. Okay, well, those two things are infinite, okay? Infinite something and infinite nothing, okay? Because you can never quite get to the end of both of them. Those two things have to be balanced. And in nature, everything's balanced in a dang circle, okay? This is why you see halos and other things and God represented as a circle, okay? So those two things, nothing and something's existing on this circle, and God is balancing it, okay? The circle balances it, if you like. And it's an infinite cycle, okay? So that means it's occurring all at the same time. So that means that everything exists at the same time as nothing exists, okay? So if you can get your head wrapped around that, you're halfway there to understanding about reality, okay? Because what reality shows us, in very plain terms, is it gives us an illusion of duality, right? Okay? And then you have a balancing point, which is usually nature shows us a balancing point between those two things, and usually it's a secular thing. Okay? Anyway, without too much more wiffle waffle, I'm just getting at the point that nature is always balanced, okay? There's two sides to nature. So you've got your scales, you've got your scales weighing, the justice symbol, and nature or God is that balancing point, okay? And so everything has to be perfectly balanced, okay? So we know that, okay? For everything to exist, everything must be perfectly balanced, okay? Or not exist. What, it boggles the mind sometimes when you start getting into this stuff. Anyway, so we know basically everything's balanced. In this realm, man is king, okay? Man's the top of the food chain, the top of the food pyramid. We have dominion. That gives us dominion over everything that is in this realm, okay? Even though we didn't create it, which is what I'm going to get into later about whether we actually own what we possess or whether we just possess it. Because you can't really own something you didn't make, okay? And God didn't give us a deed, if you like. So we're here and we have dominion, okay? Now, if we have dominion and everything's in balance, and we're at the top of the food chain, now how do we get to who should rule us, okay? Now, if you look at nature, okay, and you look at the species of the humans, I say it like I'm not one, but I am. When you look at the human species, everybody within the species can breed with everybody else, okay? Doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter how tall or how short you are. As at the minute, as long as you're a man and a woman, you can have a viable offspring, okay? That means we're all equal, okay? That means man is equal to woman as well, because it takes a man and a woman to perpetuate this species, okay? So that must mean that we're equal. It's like a kind of like, think of it like a bow and an arrow, you know. One without the other ain't much use, you know. I mean, you can hit somebody over the head with the bow, or you can stab somebody physically with the arrow. But for the actual thing to operate correctly, you need the bow and the arrow, okay? And they are both equal, because one without the other ain't no good. So you just have to assign it a 50% equal, you know, an equal share of worth, of value, okay? So that, I mean, right there we've explained man and woman being equal, you know, before we get on people saying, well, man's stronger than woman, you know. So put that one out the door straight away. We know as well that if we're a different colour or whatever suit we're living in this reincarnation, we can all breed with each other and we can produce viable offspring for the most part, and that means that we're all equal, okay? So just get over it. We're all equal, right? Dan, no, Dan. What about this guy? He's stronger than this guy. Why shouldn't he be in charge, you know? Well, number one, I've just explained that he isn't the full picture. This is probably why you have to have a king and queen reigning, I don't know. But he's not the full picture by himself, is he? So no one person can actually reign supreme. Because if you think about it, they wouldn't be created without the species, right? So they're not, in their own right, they didn't just come into being, you know, without the benefit of the species, okay? And neither can they perpetuate themselves for longer than their lifespan, and neither can they perpetuate their family tree without another equal, a woman. So we're already sort of breaking down the idea that one man or woman can be supreme. It can't be, you know. If you start taking that view and this idea of survival of the fittest that the BS evolution theory kind of pushes, and I think that's the reason why they push that, is the survival of the fittest thing, to make it appear like there should be one supreme leader. Well, if you took the idea of evolution to its, you know, finality, what you would end up with is you'd end up with an asexually reproducing species that was a clone of itself, at least, and had some kind of hive mind, which was all the same thoughts. You know, you wouldn't have a species anymore, you know, not as we know it, not as God created it, you know. So that evolutionary sort of ending or idea to what the species should be is complete BS. And you might say, well, we haven't reached that point yet. Well, that's a difficult one to try and argue, you know. I mean, there's no, you know, why haven't we reached that point yet, you know? I mean, if you really think about evolution, it should have reached that point. It should reach that point very quickly, because, you know, this idea that out of chaos came this order. It should be heading directly to the finish line. You know, it shouldn't be doing all this wishy-washy moving around stuff. Well, what decides this is another good point. What decides where the species goes? Is it another man? Is it a supreme man that decides the direction of the species? I don't think so. I think it's nature. Okay, so there's not a very good argument for this idea of evolution and one supreme leader for all men. It just doesn't wash it with me, and if you really use common sense, I don't know anybody that would argue against it, to tell you the truth. It's just complete nonsense, if you try to argue against the idea of some kind of creative force that's driving. It's more of a creative force that's driving, which we would call nature, is driving where the species goes. This idea of evolution is convoluted, to say the least. Anyway, that I've just established there that we're all equal, all right? Now, what we need to now know is we need to kind of define what an actual living being is, right? Or at least on the human level, what a living being is, right? So we know we have a body, right? And we know that the consciousness that each of us has resides within that body, okay? That's what makes us living, okay? We have a consciousness, a spirit, within a physical, manifest being, okay? So, that's what makes us living, okay? Now, you know, and I know, that I have, and this is why we have the term soul possession, my soul has possession of this body. It's not, my next door neighbour doesn't come over and start thinking, I'll make Dan's hand go up and down. Start doing crazy things just on his own thoughts alone. Although they would like you to believe it in the movies, as yet I haven't witnessed that, so we're not going to go down that road. And hypnotherapy is slightly different, so we're going to say that we have possession of it. So we know we have possession of our own bodies, okay? Our spirit has possession. Our own life force has possession of our own bodies. Okay. So, we know we're equal, we know this, that, we know we're equal, we know that everything in nature has to be balanced, okay? We know God himself is balanced, and I mean, if some people believe that they are part of God, I mean, you can't be God in your entirety, although God really isn't, I don't really want to get into this, because God isn't really indivisible, it's a bit like dividing nothing. If you divide nothing, you just have nothing, and more nothing, and more nothing, and the same way, if you divide pure everything, you just have everything, more everything, I mean, you can't divide, so you can't actually, technically speaking, you can't actually divide God. So these people that go around saying, well, I'm God, actually, technically, they are kind of right, but, well, that's something I don't really want to get into today, but you really are, I've completely lost my train of thought now, but you really cannot be, let's start this again, okay? You have possession of your body, okay? We know everything in nature is equal. We know that if you have possession of your body, you don't have possession of somebody else's body, and you know you have possession of your body, so you shouldn't be going around doing stuff and upsetting the balance, i.e. taking somebody else's possession, which doesn't belong to you. So you go and do something physically wrong to that, you are violating that spirit's life, that spirit, and the life being the body and the spirit combined. I don't know where to go from here, to tell you the truth. Because now we start breaking into, we have natural law. We've established really what natural law is, and that is you don't take somebody else's possessions. Okay, everybody is equal, and everybody has equal domain over the earth. This is an important thing. This whole idea of land. I've got to move this. I've got a cursor right on my face. It's bugging me. This idea of like owning certain portions of the Earth's surface and certain mineral rights that are owned by elite people. Where they're treading there is a very delicate subject, really. And I tell you what, if you look at the way they operate, they know this. Okay, so they don't do. I tell you what, they're pretty careful about what they do. If you were to hold them to rights and say, you're a man or a woman, and I demand fair treatment, a lot of them would probably turn around and say, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna buckle on this. We're not gonna use the legal system to sort things out, because what we have is this legal system which man has brought in. It's solely there to control people, to control Earth's wealth. So the value of people and the value of the actual Earth is basically there just to control all material items within the Earth realm. Okay. So contracts is how they do this. This legal system is based on contracts, right? I tell you what, I've completely lost where I'm going with this. I probably should just start again. I think I might, because I have absolutely bloody no idea where I'm at now. Oh dear. We've established natural law, okay, and what that is, okay. So what man did, right, is there's a legal system, like I say, to control people, and it's basically worked through a bunch of contracts, okay, and this is why it's called the maritime law, okay. Basically because it's not really the rule of the land where man has domain, okay. This is go back to the Bible kind of thing. But this is why it's called the rule of the sea, you see, or the law of the sea, because technically, us being land mammals, we don't really have domain over the sea. Okay, that's not where we live. Okay, so this is where this law comes from, the idea of maritime law. Okay, and we have to literally step into that. You know, we have to literally enter the water, and that sounded a bit funny. We have to literally enter the water and kind of, you know, we sit on a vessel within their system, okay? Might well be why there's a blue pill in the Matrix, you know, to represent maritime law, to represent water. There's also a couple other reasons why it might be a blue pill I'm not going to go into. But, and of course, the red pill, I don't know what that represents. Blood, I suppose. A real living man, you know. But there's a lot of other symbolism there as well I'm not going into. But that's just one idea, you know. This idea of the maritime. Now, another interesting thing is when Jesus walks on water, okay? He actually rises. I mean, when you start looking at this stuff, it's very interesting, because when you start thinking about what does that mean to walk on water? Well, actually, what it means is he's above the legal system. He's actually superseding the legal system. He's actually above it. You know, he's actually transversing over the top of it. He's almost like turned it into land, if you like. You know, it's another nice analogy there. You know, in the Bible, there's a bunch of stuff everywhere, but you can look this stuff up, and once you start getting into it, you just see more and more of it popping up everywhere, basically. I need to put this stuff down. It's not helping me. So this is just going to be a whiffly waffly, I'm afraid to say. So basically we've established, which I've said about 50 million times now in this video, we've basically established what natural law is. Okay, now we know that man's law, which is a bunch of regulations that man just creates in order to control other men, okay, and control resources of the earth, okay, and those are rules and regulations that the real man is conned into believing he has to adhere to. He believes that he's the fictitious kind of like person in the play, you know, and he believes that's who he is, because the identity that the system gives to him uses his actual physical image, if you like, and that's the trick, you know. And you have a birthday when your fictitious entity is created. Of course, you know, a birthday is not really when you're created, you know, and so this is something that they really don't want you to know, and a lot of people don't really think about, is you're actually 9 months older than your birthday. Okay, you were created 9 months before that point. Okay, that's your real creation date. That's your godly, natural creation date. Okay, without getting into the, you know, I mean, anybody with a bit of common sense can figure this stuff out. Okay, and I don't really have to. Surely I don't have to spell it out to people, but you know, if you're going to adopt the birthday and you're going to adopt the fact that you think you're the person on the driving license and the person in Social Security, that's how they trap you. Now, the fact of the matter is, okay, you cannot sell your soul. Okay, this is the salvation, okay, that people do not know. Okay, this is the one of the things they don't want you to know. You know, there's a number of things they don't want you to know, but this is another one of these things. They don't want you to know that you can't sell your soul. You cannot contract your soul to the devil. You cannot physically do it. You can't do it. That's how nice God is, okay? He said, that's the biggest trick the devil played, okay, is making you believe that you could even sell your soul. You can't do it. Number one, okay, you have possession of your body, right? And I've gone off on a tangent here, but this is interesting. You have possession of your body, right? And it's kind of contract law as well. You have possession of your body, okay? And God gave you that possession, didn't he? Okay, because your spirit's in there. What the spirit is, we're not going to get into that today. But the spirit is in the body. The body has possession. The soul has the soul has possession of the body. We know this much, okay? Now, can the soul contract away itself or the body? Can it do it? And we'll go into why it can't, okay? Potentially it could, but it would be very complex to do, because you'd have to do it on a moment-to-moment basis for eternity, okay? This is why God, so difficult. I should really, so difficult to explain, but one of these strange things that we have is aging. Doesn't make a lot of sense with evolution, but we have this thing called aging, and it's put there for a reason by the Creator, okay? And it's to show us physically that we are not the same man or woman that we were when we were born, okay? And science tells us this. Science tells us that our cells in our body are completely replaced every 7 years, maybe, something like that. And if I was to ask you, and I would say, boy, I know I'm not the same man I was 10 years ago. I know I'm not. I know I've got different thoughts on stuff. So Apart from making a contract in the here and now and maybe doing an exchange like a transaction, like buying something, and a straight transaction, can you actually make a contract that says I will do this thing for a certain amount of time, and I will contract this other person that we're going to do this exchange for a certain amount of time? The answer to that is if the both parties observe reality and nature, the answer is no, because we can all observe that we are people that age, okay, and we change. In order to make a contract, you have to have an entity that doesn't change. You can't have something that's constantly changing make a contract, because that thing's constantly, I don't want to say evolving, but it's constantly changing, you know. So the thing that made the contract on such and such a date is not the same thing after that date. It can't possibly make that guarantee. And of course, God tells us this as well, or nature tells us this as well, because we have a limited time here on the earth, okay? We don't live forever. So once you start realizing this stuff, this is going to be a long video, sorry. But if you watch this long, then you know. But this is what, this is stuff that's shown to us. The craziness of how the species works and the way reality works is reason. There's a reason why it's like it is, okay? And it's to show us the way. I know this sounds a bit crazy talk, but it really does. I mean, it really does. Just simple. Because I got into this whole thing and I'm thinking, oh man, I mean, I just wish I could understand this stuff. And it's actually very, very simple to understand it if you just apply common sense, which most people have, and what you actually just see in nature. It doesn't have to be complicated, okay? God makes it so simple for everybody, or nature makes it so simple to understand if you just look, and that's the problem. Everybody's so distracted with everything, they forget to look. Tea's gone cold. I suppose I better start wrapping this up. Anyway, we have a legal system and we have natural law. So we've kind of explained the two, okay? And all I can say to people is you just have to go away and just watch a bunch of stuff on this and try and get through it and learn stuff. And as you do, it will become more clear. The more stuff you watch about it, the clearer it becomes, Anyway, where does this lead us to now? Well, basically, the problem with reality right now is that nobody's actually free. Nobody's free because we're all born into, as they say in the Matrix, a system of bondage. I can't remember the exact quote, but something like that. And our value is extracted. Our energy is extracted. Yes, you are that battery in the Matrix. That's energy being extracted from you. They take value from you, and until you wake up out of your little cocoon that you're in, and you break free of that little cocoon, and you realize that you are the real man, which is what happens to Neo in the Matrix. He has the physical incarnation, okay? Then you're just, you're stuck in it. And again, the legal system plays out that people believe the system so much that they act the role of Agent Smith, okay? So the police officers that don't understand natural law, they don't understand if they're violating natural law, then go ahead and act out like the legal system is it. It is, the Matrix is so they act out the Agent Smith role, okay? And everybody else does it as well. oh, you're not paying your taxes, and you get frowned upon for not paying your taxes. Guess what, people? I'll tell you what. The hidden taxes is enough to run what we need to run, you know. The other taxes that everybody wants you to pay, and if you're not paying your taxes and you kind of get shunned or whatever, people look down on you like you're some kind of low life and don't want to contribute to society and everything. Well, quite honestly, if you really got into looking at this stuff and looking at the hidden taxes that are out there, and I'll tell you the biggest one right now that nobody really talks about ever is inflation, you know. But nobody wants to talk about that kind of stuff. But just start thinking about some of this stuff. It becomes more and more apparent how the matrix system works, you know. When you finally, I'm going to take another analogy with Neo here. When he goes back into the Matrix, he operates under their rules, you know, and he's trying to dodge bullets and everything, and he gets nicked, and you know, he's still operating within their system. When he finally realizes, okay, that the real man cannot be affected by the fictitious Matrix, what happens? Oh, he just jumps into Agent Smith, doesn't he? Blows him up. He just stands there and stops the bullets. This is the realization that Neo has at that point in time. that everything is fictitious. It's not really real, okay? And that it can't really hurt him, you know. Don't know where else to go with this video. This is a talk on natural law, and I've ended up getting back into the Matrix and sort of the representations in there. But basically, going back to what I was saying about selling your soul, you can't sell your soul to the devil. You just can't do it. You can't make a contract that would bind you for more than an instant in time, okay? Because it's not the same man, you know, and the man is defined by the physical being along with the spirit, you know. This is where the legal fiction differs, okay, because it's not living, okay, and it can't be living. Number one, it doesn't have a body, and number two, it has to borrow a little bit of spirit or soul from a living man in order for it to do anything, okay. Well, realistically, that's not a living entity in any form, because in order to be a living entity, the body and the soul cannot be separated. It can't be separated, okay. The people in charge know that when they lock somebody up, even they're treading on thin ice, let's put it that way, when they lock somebody up. I mean, they have to have consent, okay? If you were to turn around and if you were in jail and you were to turn around and say, look, I've changed my mind on this, I'm not giving consent anymore, and you were to send a certified copy of that to, let's say, it'd have to be somebody in the real world, you know, and you'd have to hold them accountable. But these people that are running the world, there has to be a set of rules, okay? And God put a set of rules in play, and that is balance, okay? And balance must be maintained, otherwise there would be no point to the world. It would fall apart. So that means, okay, one man doing harm to another man, there must be a weighing of the scales. Now, that, you know, I mean, if you're going to do something bad, that may end up being hell, okay, for somebody that's done something that's wrong. Okay, and this doesn't go for somebody like, what about if somebody does stuff that's right all their lives? Will they have to balance the scales with doing something bad? Well, no, because the deal is consent. Okay, when you take something that's not yours without the consent of the party, now you're taking something without their consent. Okay, now that's got to be balanced at the end of the day. I don't know how that's balanced, but somehow God balances that. Now, it may be a very long time in hell for certain people, okay? And I am believing that there is definitely a balancing system there somehow. I don't know. I don't know how that works, okay? I don't know if that is just a set amount of time in purgatory or some kind of limbo or hell, or who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's within your own lifetime, living out some kind of hell in there. The fact of the matter is, though, you're going to pay a balancing force because that's the way nature works, okay? And it has to be balanced. If it wasn't balanced, then it wouldn't work, and it couldn't happen, okay? That's all I know. And these people, if you look at the way the upper echelon work, I believe they're insulating themselves from that that kind of wrongdoing, you know. And I also believe that a lot of them know, like old Queenie, she knows what she's doing is wrong, okay? But I have the consent of all the people. They are my subjects, and they're willingly my subjects. But yes, she knows that, I'm sorry, but tricking somebody into something that's not right, okay? And there is only right or wrong. There's no subjective in the middle, like, and, I mean, I feel sorry for her because I know that she's got to pay the price at the end of the day. She's going to have to pay the price, but coming back to that about what I was saying about I'm bringing up on my lap. But coming back to what I was saying about oh bloody hell, I've forgotten what I was saying. What I was saying about what was I saying about what I was saying? Coming back to what I was saying about shit, I'll have to edit this bit out. Sorry. I'll pop back into it in just a second when I thought about what I was wanting to talk about again now. Completely lost the plot now. I apologise about that. It's probably a good time to end this video anyway, actually. 48 minutes. So I will just end it right there, because otherwise I'm just going to waffle on for hours and hours and hours, and 48 minutes is just too much time. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm going to expand on this. Now we know what natural law is, and we know what the legal system is, man-made law. Then we can kind of try and sort of expand on some of these ideas. I don't really know where to go from here. But anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!